Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Pantarts Live this evening. I know we're a bit out of sync with the week because I've had to change things around as my husband is having surgery on Thursday, and I didn't feel I could manage a live on the same day because you never quite know whether things will go to plan or whether they won't go to plan. Timings wise as much as anything else. So that's sort of why we're out of sync, and I'm very grateful for Pentart being so supportive of everything that's going on. The surgery is relatively high risk, and I'm not feeling particularly seasonal at the moment. Good evening, Juliana. Thank you for joining us this evening. Anyway, I'm a very lucky young lady. I have the new Stamperia Herbarium Silverlight collection, and so I thought I would do something that would work for a present for someone, maybe for someone where you might want a garden theme present, something that might go in a shed or in someone's office. So that's what we're up to this evening. We have a little wooden board. It's got a nice return on it, so we're actually going to use this a bit like a shadow box. It's, I think, approximately 6 inches. Let me measure it for you. So it's just under 15 centimeters, so a little under 6 inches, and it is just under 30 centimeters, so just under 12 inches that direction. And we're going to use it in a landscape mode because that's what's going to work for me, and we're going to go from there. So let me just move that so out of the glare a little bit. I have my fan heater on in the background because it's freezing cold, and I have an hoodie to keep warm because it's cold. So there we are. That is the thought process. Now then, so I'll just pick up some colours. So we're going to do a couple of different techniques. It is going to be a traditional me style project, but you wouldn't expect anything less really. The papers have soft muted greens, and I'm deliberately not priming this because it won't matter for the technique that I'm going to do, and it's nice absorbent wood, so I might end up using a little bit more paint, but feel free to add a layer of either acrylic primer or primer paste or gesso, or the new Artemisa gesso will work just as well because I'm using acrylic paints, and that will that will work quite nicely. So there are lots of options. You could even use the wall decor product primers if that's what you have. But as I say, I'm putting mine directly on to the bare wood because we're going to add some layers, and so I'm not overly worried about an even coverage. Good evening, Renee. As I say, I'm not too sure how many people will catch us this evening, because I'm out of sync with my normal. But of course, that means that the live will be there for people to watch on catch up when it suits them. Maybe at my normal time when they're hunting for a live, and there isn't one. As I say, there we are. It's all for different people, isn't it? We have got a few people watching because I can see that. If a few more than have identified themselves, that's always something to be grateful for. So we're just going to carry on, and we'll pop this there. And I'm using one of my go-to greens, which is an acrylic paint matte in the colour Thorn. So it's sort of a muted green because that to me works with the collection. I don't know if you'd like me. Good evening, Aniko. Welcome, my darling. Hopefully my phone will convert that in your whatever you have written It dutifully has. Thank you very much for wishing me a happy evening. I will have a good evening. I always do when I am in my classroom. So that is cool. My first language is English. I'm afraid to admit that it is also my only language. I don't have any language proficiency skills whatsoever. I'm not going to pretend that I do. So, yeah, welcome, and I hope that you can understand what we're doing. Yeah, so we'll just pop this in. We're going to add some layers, and because I want to use some of the rub-ons from the collection on the background piece, it's really important that when you're using a rub-on or a transfer, depending on the company that that they're coming from, that the background is properly dry through and through. And that can be a challenge time-wise on a live. So let me just get this layer properly dried, then we can add the next layer into here so that we've got a chance of getting everything done. And of course I do have my fan heater on next to me. That might be the whirring sound that you can hear when my heat gun is off, and that will help dry some of the layers up. Good evening, Sheila. Welcome, my darling. Thank you for watching this evening. Yeah. I just need to get all of my layers properly dry, because otherwise, once some of the layers on top just will not stick, and that's not good. So, has anyone seen the herbarium section from Humphrey? It is truly, truly beautiful. And yes, ladies, I'm going back to one of my go-to mediums, the Crackle Medium one component. Now, this is what I call a PCP crackle. So I have a paint layer beneath it. I'm going to apply a layer of this, let it dry, and then add another layer of paint. So paint, Crackle Medium, paint on top, PCP. It's the only one component crackle that Pentart have, so it's not so difficult to to remember this process. And it always strikes me as odd that it's sort of called a one component when there are 3 layers, but it's sold as a single pot, and then you define the other layers from it. And you can just pop it straight onto glass, and then add a layer of paint over the top, and it will crackle beautifully. And perhaps one day I should do that for everyone. What do we think? Would we like a reverse decoupage piece at some point? I'm sure I can find a Christmassy mate to do a reverse decoupage on a glass plate. Might have to go out to the children's playhouse to find the glass plate, but that's not impossible to do, is it? There we are. So that is the one component Crackle Medium down, and it goes on really shiny, and it's the consistency of a syrup, so that makes life cool. I'm wanting a slightly different effect around the edges, so I've got a medium out that I don't use very often. This is limestone stone effect paste, which I thought was really appropriate for the idea of having a garden project. So there are a range of stone effect pastes in lots of different colours. Cement, there's a terracotta, there's so you can choose a colour that works for you. Just excuse me bobbing down just while I endeavour to find one of my smaller palette knives. And we're just going to pop some of this paste onto here. If you've only got structure paste, then feel free to use that. But this will go on and give me a limestone effect, wall effect based, really, which I just thought was, again, was going to work appropriately for the project and the concept of the project. So let me just, she said, putting her hand in something in the wet crackle medium, because that's what we're doing. I'm going to leave the edges plain, but again, off live I would almost certainly do the side returns of this wooden board. This will work perfectly well on MDF, on wood, on canvases, to give you texture, and the effect of basically limestone. There's a cement one that's grey, lots of different colours in this, and of course this one that is white could be coloured with other mediums as you want. We might add, if it can get it dry enough tonight, we might add some other bits and pieces, some colour over the top for it, but getting it dry might prove slightly problematic. I'm not putting it on hugely thick tonight because I don't want it to take forever to dry. Let's just pop that onto there. Let's just smooth that out. Gently does it. There we are. Doesn't have to be entirely smooth, because a limestone wall wouldn't be. Good evening, Connie. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for watching out for the change for my schedule for this week. It is only going to be for this week. Let me just turn this round and then we can tackle the other side of here. There we are. Pop that on. You can see some areas that haven't. This is just going to add contrast to the edges. Can be coloured with pigment paste quite happily. You could even mix in a little bit of acrylic paint, or you can add a lasers over the top, or even dilute your lasers down with some water and spritz them onto it quite happily for a little bit of added texture, to suit what you want, really, because that's the joy of being able to create for yourself, is that you can then make projects that you are happy with and that are truly customized. Pentacolor have a fabulous range of mediums for doing just that with. Let me just cover that area there. There we are. We don't need it to be too smooth, completely smooth, but we don't want it necessarily completely flat either. Good evening, Blanche. Welcome. So yes, okay, I will bear that in mind, Sheila, and I will do that. So I'm just going to tuck that onto the floor. And let me just put it up on top of something so it's getting more of the heat. Excuse the view of my bottom if that's what you could see. And from there. So I have chosen some pieces. There are 3 Stamperia moulds that come with the Herbarium collection. Herbarium Sylvae collection. So there is this one. These are the thinner moulds compared to past editions. So we've got this one with a giant hat, a letter, some books, lots of nice bottles. This one is the word herb. We have a beautiful bridge, a door. Let me grab that one. I can grab that one maybe something because I already have it made. So that is the door already made with the same collection, just decorated, and there are more elements from the collection on this back of there. I'll pop that back out of the way. So then we have this piece here, which is a little fence. We have Welcome Herbarium, is that one. We have 2 birds which we're not using, and the bridge, which we are going to use this evening. And then there is also this mould that has lots of leaves in it. So lots of different leaves. It's thinner. It's not so easy to pour, but they are beautiful. And I'm going to use just one of those tonight, and the rest come from that third mould. So they are lovely moulds. These leaves are all different to ones that have appeared in previous moulds from Stamperia. So that's always cool, isn't it, to build your stash. You can never have too many leaves, I think. So we have some wood, some pieces that need wood. We have some bottles. We have some greenery. We have some little mushrooms on here and some bottles. So these are the pieces that I've chosen to work with tonight. For, let me just move that down because that will help get rid of the glare, I think. Pop those around. So let's just pop these around, and then we can do the pieces logically. Logically? Yes, logically. So let us just get out some of our different colours. So we have the earthy brown, slightly different colours. The tonal palette in the collection, which is what's guiding me in terms of choosing what I'm using, are all sort of vintage muted colours rather than bright. So let's just make our paint our fence. These have all been cast with rapid resin, and they have all had a coat of primer paste to make it easier for me to get our paint to adhere and to give the project some longevity. So let's just see where we go. There's not masses of inspiration available at the moment for this collection, but I'm sure that will, over the next month or so, sort itself out. But hopefully my project will also inspire. So we just need to get into all of the nooks and the crannies in here. So sometimes turning your pieces upside down will make that easier. As I say, I have already taken the liberty of priming these with primer paste, because it just makes life easier to have that dry before the start of the live. That's going to get into those nooks and crannies. There we are. Sometimes it's definitely easier to paint from behind than it is from the front. And let's see how long it is before I end up with mucky mitts. Won't be long really, will it? Because we all know that I can't manage not to get my hands covered in stuff. There we are. Okay, we managed to get that. So there are lots of browns in the acrylic paint mats collection. So you choose the brown that works for you. I don't necessarily think there is an entirely right or an entirely wrong answer. And I could have 25 different brown shades on the surface out here, but we're going to keep things reasonably tonal, because why not? There we are. Have I managed to get everything? Probably, and possibly not. So this piece will be a little bit more of a challenge to the bridge, because we have some wooden crossbows, and we also have some stones as well. But we'll tackle the pieces and we'll worry about the stones after, and we can always come back and add in some grey for the colours. The stone, of course, bridges have a wooden this bridge in my head has wooden pieces or wooden struts or wooden handles to stop you falling off at. So there we are. Let's just get this into here. As I say, we'll come back in and we'll tackle the stones with a grey colour afterwards. There we are. So I trust that everyone is well and that your Christmas preparations are going well. As I say, I think sometimes we need to, a lot of people have had their decorations up and now it's definitely we're in full-on Christmas present thinking, and maybe not everyone needs a Christmas piece as a Christmas decoration gift. Sometimes, something that's non-Christmassy will work very well. Right, excellent. So let's just do our wooden stand for our post. It's got some greenery around the bottom coming up around that, which is fine. So let's just pop that onto there. Make sure we have what we need to have covered. Excellent. Cool. So let's just pop, oh no, and the herb sign is definitely on a wooden base. So I'm going to be moderately slap happy here, and I'll pick out the words separately. Post. This being dry. There's some more greenery and there's definitely a couple of mushrooms in there. All the detail, as ever, is in all of these molds with lots of additional pieces. So it's just good to be able to just spend some time looking at the detail, picking it out, building the layers as you go, which of course is something that I do on a very regular basis. There we are. So let's just pop that into there. And we have a little shelf here. So that also can have that brown. Rather than getting out even more colours of brown, we'll stick with that. So let's just pick up what I hope is out. Absolutely is, which is the vintage grey. So let's pick a smaller paintbrush for here, and let's just pick out the wooden bits or the stone bits of my bridge. Of course, they could be whatever you wanted them to be, couldn't they? But in my head there are stone elements to this bridge. There we are. And I'm not overly worried about getting some of the in. I can always come back and add some more of the brown back in when I want to. So these are definitely thinner castings than quite often you get with Stamperia molds, which is nice. So let me just take that. I'm going to paint the back of that in the grey, as if it's a painted board, but we're going to have some different colours for the two with the words, just to add a little bit to it. I don't think we'll be here forever and a month of Sundays painting. You never know with me, do we? We never know with me. Right, excellent. So let's just pop that there. And lid of that. And I'm just going to throw a big bundle of brushes over there, which I'll promptly forget where I've put them. because that's just what will happen, isn't it? Yes, of course it is just what will happen. And then we have some softer colours, and so let's just pop some of these off to the side, and then we can tackle the bottles while those first layers get a little bit of a break. Okay, so bottles are difficult to paint because if you're thinking of them as glass, that's not really compatible, is it, with what's going on? So I've got some cream and some blue here, and then we're going to pick up some of the details, and we've got some bark for the lids. So there's lots of details on these. So let's just start out by painting this in a creamy colour. And then I want to add in a little bit of blue to give the suggestion that it might be. And this is actually country green, rather than a true blue, but it's definitely a blue green. So let's pop this onto here, and I'm just going to add some of this in patches, just to give the idea that we might have a bit of a glass bottle. And I've also got a colour called Nimbus out. So Nimbus is a really soft green. Now this pot of mine has probably been open for more years than I care to think about, but I'm deliberately keeping these colours relatively soft, because that's fits with the colour palette of the collection. So let me just take that, and then let's just take that Nimbus at that dark, that country green, and give the that label on there. So there's lots of detail in these which we will draw out. Of course we will. Of course we will. There we are. And I know that I do this sort of colour mixing on my pieces so that no two are ever exactly the same. But that's how I like to work. And it also means that I don't have a ton of extra there we are. So 3 very fairly neutral colours. But that's fine. Let's just tidy that. Okay, so we're going to do the same here. We're going to pick up some of that ivory. Yes, I've got some other colours mixed in with it now, but it all makes for the unique pieces. Oh yes, we've got all sorts of details to bring out. So let's just paint that, and then we'll get these first layers dry, and then I can start to add in my details onto these. That one actually says mint. There we are. Let's just pick up some of that. That's got a leaf on there. I'm actually going to make my life simple because this is such a small piece. There we are. Let's just have that in a bottle, a completely different colour. There we are. And this one I think is almost in a almost as if it's in maybe a raffia piece. And I know that, so let's just get into there. Let's just cover our sides nicely, and then we'll worry about the next piece. So on there, and we've got another bottle here. Let's go with the Nimbus. And we've got some books. Let's just paint some of these in slightly different colours. No idea what that says on it, but there is definitely right words on here. No, can't decipher it. Not going to stress about it. Now these could be any colours that you wanted. Do I have a blue paint? A soft blue. Yes, we do. We have country blue. So that is in the same family as the other. So let's just take some of that. Let's have a blue. Oh, she says making a mess of the brown, but that's okay. We can sort that out in a minute. And then let's just mix that in. And we'll have a softer colour for that last book on there. There we are. So let's just do that. Let's just take that blue and we're going to add that onto there. And then we'll get out the brown again. Right, so let us pick up a piece of kitchen towel. And let's just wipe that back a little bit because we've made a mess. And that's fine. That will just give a so that definitely says welcome and herbarium into there. Let's just pop that there. Let's put the lid on that. Let's just grab that brown and then we can have a little bit of a tidy up of the brown pieces that we're wanting, that I'm wanting to have a little bit tidier. There we are. Let's come back to this bridge and let's just come across where I think the wood should really be and where I went over it with the grey, with that grey. There we are. And I can now pick up the pieces on here that we missed because we did. Because that's also just life, isn't it? Okay. And let's just neaten up that country grey. There we are. Excellent. And then we can now start adding some of the details. So let's just lid some of this collection of paints that we have lurking on the side and think about what we're going to do. I don't want stark colours. That's not the intention. I've got some green. So let's choose a different green for some of these pieces whilst those have a little red. So this is olive. So lots of leaves on here. So let's just paint this sheath of leaves. Would work nicely, this mould, for an autumn festival or maybe a sympathy card with just a simple message and a simple back. It'd be, you know, really pared back. Yeah, not something I tend to, I often do, is it? You definitely, I suspect, think of me as a more person. There we are. There are leaves here, so let's just paint these all in. Leaves and sticks. Painting over pieces that are already painted is also set to cause me grief, isn't it? There's some different leaves over there, so let's just leave that for the moment. I'm going to need that grey out, I think. So let's have, because it looks like there's a stone at the bottom of here, rather than it all being just pop that over there for the moment. And let's just re-come at that grey. Good evening, Blanche. If I didn't say hello before when you came in, I apologise if we didn't. There we are. Where was my brain? Where was my brain? There was a reason I went to pick up that grey. Oh, I know why I went to pick up that grey. It's for the stones at the bottom. There we are. You see, it would help if you had a brain that was functional. It's not very functional at the moment. I am, I have to say, moderately stressed about what's going on. Let's just give that lid a grey feel, because that's definitely a lid. Let's pick up some of these and also put them in the grey. I don't want black. I'm not going to do all of them in the grey. There we are. Right, there we are. Pop that over there. So we've got something. I think this one should. She says that being where she wanted to correct the brown. There we are. There we are. There we are. So raffia. What colour is raffia? It's a yellow, dirty yellow, isn't it? So I have ochre. Let's just pop some ochre down there, but I don't want it to be quite so strong because raffia isn't. So let's just pick some of that ivory. That's too yellow. So let's just colour mix in a little bit of brown, because why not? Why not? There we are. And I don't need anywhere near the amount I'm mixing, but hey ho, let's just see where we go. If that's going to give me a colour that I think is, yeah, that's a bit better. Possibly still too dark, but hey ho. So let's just paint on here our casing to this bottle. For custom colouring, because just don't be afraid to take what you've got and then add the colours that will work for you. I'm just sticking to a colour palette that is soft and gentle, and that for me I think reflects quite well the palette of the collection. Now I know that there is a little string there, and a string, the tails of the string can go there, so that's okay. I'm going to take that browny colour and I'm going to do some mushrooms in that colour. I know I'm deliberately not choosing bright red because there's no bright red in the collection, if that makes any sense whatsoever. There we are. And I definitely don't want a dark colour at this point. So there we are. Let's just pick up that nimbus and come back across there with that. Have we got all lids are now coloured? Excellent. That's always a good starting point. I'm going to have to give these a blast dry because I'm going to want to start layering some colours together, and I can't actually layer terribly effectively without adding some extra. And I'm going to take, that is the olive, and also the thorn. We've all seen me plonk out paint and then throw half of it away, but hey ho, there we are. So let's just leave that to dry for just a little bit longer. And so on here we have some Chinese, some maple leaves that are rather pretty. So let's just pick them out. With that thorn colour, the thorn I used right at the beginning, so there's definitely leaves in there. Just because it's a challenge, I'm going to pick up a smaller brush. I know, horror of horrors, can I find a nice small brush, she says to myself. There we are. Because lurking on here, again, some little leaves. It's nothing like setting people a challenge, is there? And yeah, when it comes to these moulds, there is a label on this. I might just be using. There we are. Two little leaves on there. Just going to take. Just flick across the top of there to add. So we've got that. By keeping the brush flat, it's allowing me just to kiss the surface of there. So we've got a little leaf on there. That definitely needs a dry before I go near that. So let's just pick up the leaf that's on there. There we are. Right, let's just give them a little bit of a blast dry before I can pick up the next layer of colours that I want to pick out on some of these. There's lots of detail. Good evening, Anna. Thank you for joining us this evening. Yeah, not distressing because life's too short, isn't it? I want to tidy up for some of these pieces. It all come together. It always does. So we've got a word on here that I don't know what language it's in, but anyway, it's not in a language that I understand. So let's just add in those leaves carefully. Oops, she says, I don't really want paint on those. And let me see if I can find a small flat brush. Will it work for me? That will work. Echinacea, I think is what that says actually. Now I can ECH, yeah, echinacea. There we are. It's amazing what happens when you. There we are. That definitely says mint. That one's easy to see. And there's a W on there. Let's just pop the W into there. And then I'm going to take that blue and just come across the words. Herbs is what that one says. Okay. Chamomile is what that one says. And I really don't know what that one says, but hey ho, there we are. So, welcome. So the key is little paint on the flat brush and then put it parallel to it. Herbarium. Now, on here, we have a rope. Don't like that colour. Don't like that. That's better when it's wiped back. So maybe we'll just wipe it back. It's just better colour wiped back, I think. There we are. Don't have a problem with adding some of that onto the rest of it and smudging it around a bit. There we are. Maybe we'll convert the little bow on here into that yellowy colour. Do I like? Yeah, I sort of think I do. I'm going to take some of this. Oops. Pop that onto those stones. And so why did you paint them green? But actually, if I just do that, it's just going to work for that low lighting into there. So let's just add that onto the rest of it. So instead of using an antiquing gel, I'm going to use the paint and just wipe it off, and it's still going to sit in to all of the details for me. The key is to get it off while it's wet, because otherwise it's not, once it's dry, it's not going to lift off. Or to water it down really well. Watering it down will work as well. There we are. Now I'm just going to add some dry brushing onto those to pick up the detail in them rather than it all being completely flat. There we are. Okay. So let's just have an almighty clean down while those dry. Let's protect. Thank you. The detail on them is really nice. As I say, there we are. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. We are going to antique some of them. Primarily those bottles. Right, let's just pop that nice brush over there safely. Let's get rid of that. Get rid of that. Right, eeny, meeny, miny. Oh, she says knocking stuff flying. There we are. That's a joy because that means that is nicely dry. So I just have a matte varnish here. Let's just pick up a cream crackered brush because why not? And then let's just whack on a layer of paint, of varnish onto here to protect these. I'm obviously going to spread this over lots of pieces rather than it all being left into one piece. Certainly don't want it in all of those letters. Okay, there we are. Did we manage to paint that bit? No, of course not, but hey, we'll not worry. This is the one I really want to add in some antiquing details to, just because there's so many layers of texture on that big bottle. Right. Let's get rid of the worst of the excess off there. There we are. So we haven't got 25 tons of moulds today, which I think for me is relatively well behaved. I mean, we know full well that I always have lots of moulds in my pieces, so we are definitely going to add some extra to that. So that just will protect that paint whilst because I want to add some antique distressy to it. Right, let's just have that. Let's pop that over there. Let's just give this a bit of a blast. And I can move some of these out of the way. Let me use my brain. Brains would be dangerous, really, they would. There we are. Let's just, and then I can pop them all onto a floor next to the heater. They can dry, and we can go back to There we are. They can then go down there, onto there, don't pick up the rubbish, and then we can come back to our base, which is nicely dry, because I've got some layers I want to add into this. So this, for those of you that joined slightly later, this is just a wooden board that I have painted with Thorn acrylic matte, then used the one component crackle, and around the edge I've added some stone paste. So I'm just going to add a layer of my second layer of paint. So I'm fairly well loading my brush, and I'm not going to overwork it, but I don't want a particularly thick layer either, because otherwise it will not dry through and through, and I need it to dry through and through fairly quickly. There we are. Let's get rid of some of that, and that big blob in the corner, and come along that bottom and along that top, and let's just soften that white on there with what's left on my brush, so it's not completely white from there. Right, let me give this a little blast dry. It will crack fairly easily. In fact, it is already cracking, but I now need this to get this properly dry. You can see that it is cracking, so that's always cool. Definitely some areas that I'm going to struggle to have completely dry because I've blobbed large amounts of the paint on. But there we are. Patience is a virtue, but I do need to get it dry. So we're thinking of sort of weathered wood, sign outside, that we're going to then build agri-tails on. Yeah, so this was crackled really beautifully in a very random way. It's such a reliable crackle paint. Long gone are the days of part one in one direction, part two in another, and having to then struggle. So I'm aware I've got some blobs of paint in this here and here, so I'm just going to be careful. The bit that I really want to be dry, I'm going to have to give another brush dry in a minute. So there are some stamps and some stencils that come with this collection. So let's just take some of this and a stencil brush, which I have out, and I'm going to go with the soft grey, just to add some elements of text into that background. There are beautiful florals on this on this stencil. And in fact, the whole collection has completely stunning stencils with it, to be fair. There we are. I'm just going to add those into there. Do I need that on there? No. So let's just add some of that brown onto our stone wall. Again, I'm just knocking back that brown, the white, so it's not quite as stark as it might be. Dirtying it up in effect. With whatever's left on the brush. We've just got a little bit of detail on here, and as I say, this is just a completely beautiful stencil, and you can pick out whatever pieces you want to pick out quite happily. We don't need that now. There are 2 stamp sets that go with the collection. This is one of them. And I would ideally have an archival green out, but I haven't got an archival green out, I don't think. So I'm going to go with a soft brown, because I'm not going to get a perfect print, and that's fine. I'm not mithered about that. This is going to be in the background. And I've deliberately not got it on a block, because it's going to allow me to get it into the corners. And if it jumps, it doesn't really matter. But we're just going to be adding our details in, over, under. Just a suspicion of green, that we've got some leaves. Into here. There we are. So we've got some greenery added in. Let's lid that. You could, of course, find a green ink pad, preferably archival, if you're going to add. And I'm going to give that a blast to dry now, and then I'm going to sit this in front of the heater while I antique the other pieces. Thank you, Sheila. Much appreciated. It's a crackle that works. So we now have a background with some words. I'm sure they mean something, but I think they're probably in Latin. And I've long since forgotten the Latin I did at school. And that can go down there. So let's just pick this up. And I have water-based lasers tonight for antiquing with. So this is a wall decor laser in Umbra. So let's just paint this on, get it into the nooks and the crannies, and then just grab a wipe. That back. Just going to make it look a little bit more vintage. There we are. And it's a brilliant disguiser of all things bad painting, because painting done in a hurry is maybe never the best. There we are. But it will just help bring out the details. Ooh. And I'm not going to use this on the other bottles with the words, because I don't think they need it. Well, I might. What do you reckon? On all of them, or just on some bits? Feel free to put a comment if you want me to pop it onto all of them. Good. or not. There we are. Good evening, Gloria. Welcome. I don't think all of them need it, to be honest. Because I think I can see the words, the letters and things perfectly nicely. There we are. Good evening, Sarah. Thank you for joining us this evening, darling. There we are. But these definitely do. It will make a huge difference to the greenery. And we'll have a clean down in a minute. There we are. So if you've got the Umbra Antiquing Gel, then that will work quite happily for the, you know, instead of the wall decor Lasur. But if you haven't, then the wall decor Lasurs are the newest product, and they'll last you a good wee while. And they come in lots of different colours, and you've seen me using them quite a lot. Right, let me pop that into there. Pop that there. Put the brain into gear and clean the hands. Good evening, my darling. Thank you. There we are. Let's just pop that there. So we have a background that's full of interest. Let me just move that down there. Let's move some of these out of the way and give my hands a jolly good clean. And I'm hoping that that is now dry enough, because what I want to do now is add some rub-ons. And rub-ons on a wet surface or not fully dried surface are definitely not, they don't release very well. We will soon find out, but as I say, if they don't release really well, it will be my bad, not the fault of the rub-ons, because I know for a while that that's not the case. So there are multiple packs of rub-ons that come with this, including a pad that is much smaller. So, and the key for these, so these are rub-ons. And I'm going to pop some of these down now and then some of them later. But I have the advantage of knowing sort of where I'm going. And would I have liked them to have had 25 tons more of these, of the greenery rub-ons? Yeah. There we are. So I'm going to chop that piece of wall into two, because why not? And we're going to add that into that corner. And we're going to take the other half of that piece, and we're going to tuck it over there. And then we have a piece we're going to pop there, and a piece we're going to pop floating about there. Right. Wish me luck, everyone, because this is the point where this could actually become a problem. Because if this is not properly dry, they will not release. And we will soon find out. And what will happen is they'll pull the paint off, and then I'll be very unhappy. And that's going to pull the paint off. I can see that it's already not sticking. Yep. So that is what happens when it isn't dried. So, or dried fully through and through. So let me just give these all a little bit more of a helping hand to get the sticky. That's definitely going to be a problem. But remember, there are no lizards. So if you were doing this for yourself, ladies, then just wait until it is fully dried through and through. And a bit of welly at this point will also help. Because they're on a shiny surface, so I definitely need the shiny surface to come off. There we are. So with a bit of it won't matter usually in the grand scheme of things, because we have a piece that is inherently going to be looking distressed. But I will be more careful with the leaves and give that another bit of a dry. Right, you do, however, need to give it a push to stand any chance. There we are. Okie dokie. So we've got some distressed bits of rub-ons. As I say, if you leave them to dry properly, then it does make it easier. So let's just give this a bit more of a dry, and then I'll after that other one. And if push comes to shove, lift the whole thing off with the paint, put some glue where it's meant to be, and then put the whole thing back, walk away, let the glue dry, and then overnight, and then you'll be able to lift the rubber, the surface off in the morning, she says, because guess who's done it? There we are. So we seem to have that. So let's just pop our composition together so that you can see where I am going. Oh, there we are. Need. So these are pieces from the 8x8. Yeah, the 8x8 double-sided pack. And I'm going to pop these in place, show you where we're going, and then I will glue them post live. But you'll know with my favourite activity. Right. So that is going to go there. That is going to go there. That is going to go there. We're going to bridge those with that. Now then, we're going to have that one is going there. That is going to go there. And then we're going to pop. So this is going to need to be lifted up, okay? So we're going to pop that into there, and we can layer that onto there because that's setting reasonably stable, and I'm wanting to pop that there. That can go into there, and I can just shuffle stuff along. And I'm going to give these a haircut, I think. I just want them a bit smaller. That's better. That is definitely better. Okay. So that's going to go there. That wasn't quite the original plan. That, I think, might have been the original plan. With that one there, that one in there, that one there, that one there. Let's pop that there. That there. and that is going to go there. And then we have these extra pieces. Okay, so I will glue these all in place. And now, having popped them in, I can now think about where I want these rub-ons to be. Okay, being method in the madness. Let's hope that this does come off, does release. I've been giving it a bit of an extra dry. This is definitely looking at how my brain works. You see, that's definitely a bit drier. What? There we are. Give it all nice good rub. There we are. Now you know why I wanted to have this completely dry. And as I say, I will glue all of these pieces in post live once, but I will show you the total composition. And these will layer over each other quite happily. There we are. Yummy, yummy. And I'll pop that in there. Now I need 5 fingers to flick that edge out from underneath there. There we are. So we've now got some greenery behind our bridge. So that's going to go there, that's going to go there, that's going to go there, they're going to link there, that's going to link there, that bottle can be there, that's going to go there. There we are. We all get it, so we're happy in a minute. Okay, so we've got a little bit of greenery, so that can poke its way underneath there. That piece is going to go there, but I wanted some extra details still added into here, so I'm going to pop that bottle underneath there. We're going to pop the greenery here and here. We're going to have that little pot of flowers there and that one tucked underneath. We've got another bottle which I'm going to tuck there, and we have another plant pot which I'm going to tuck over there. So we're building our layers and our details and our interest by doing that. We have, these are from the Junk Journal book, so we're going to pop a little butterfly in here, a little butterfly on there, and a little butterfly, I think, just there. And then I'm going to tuck in the die cuts, or just going to tuck them in and around to build up a little bit of extra detail. So some of these are ephemera pieces and some of them are chipboard die cuts. So I'm just going to tuck these in and we'll find a home. There we are. That can go there, that can go there, That can go that can tuck partly in, partly out. Go on underneath. There we are. Like that up. That can go there. That can go there. That can go there. We'll just add. Don't like that. We're dead. We're dead. We might not. See, you then fiddle until your heart's content with the different pieces. There we are. That works in there. There we are. So that will be our finished piece. So I will use my heavy, when everything is properly dry, I will then use my heavy body gel to stick the resin pieces in, which is this one, heavy body gel matte or opal, which dries opaque. So be careful and lift off any excess, and express glue for the paper elements. So there we are. Here is our herb garden. So I hope you like the project, and that normal service will resume, and I will be back live a week on Thursday. So please, ladies, take care, look after yourselves, be kind to yourself above all else, and to your fellow human beings and non-human being friends. And in the meantime, I will see you soon. Bye.